coming up, so
Thank you, Zach.
we didn't flip for it. No, we did another one at noon. That was the only one I knew about.
Good. I've been saying good morning all the time because that way I'm right 12 hours a day. The area is going to be Bolivar Peninsula, both wind and water. At the moment, we're expecting sustained winds on Bolivar of 60 miles an hour with gust potentials to 80 miles an hour. Water has already started coming over 87 at spots, not constantly, and it's not staying there, but it's already started coming over. This morning, there was a 35-foot wave registered offshore at a buoy. So that's an example of how significant the wave action is going to be. So couple the wave action with the north winds blowing all of the water back, and Bolivar, of course, is our greatest concern. The east end of the county, of course, is Bolivar, and the hurricane track cone is just past that area. So they are the closest and most at risk. From the east end of Galveston to the western portion of Bolivar, we expect sustained winds of 40 to 50 miles an hour with potential gusts to 70 miles an hour. Our concern for both of these and really the entire county is the loss of power. With those kinds of winds, you're going to have flying limbs, debris. It's going to knock out power, and that's been kind of all along our reasoning for asking the Bolivar residents to evacuate. You're not going to be able to evacuate in a couple more hours, and you're potentially going to have no power for days or possibly longer. West Galveston and the mainland, we're expecting sustained winds of between 30 and 40 miles an hour. This will fortunately only last, we'll be done with this by this time tomorrow. So by noon to 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Laura is moving so fast, she's out of here, and we can start assessing damage and getting repairs made. TxDOT informed us that they are not going to resume ferry operations until the storm has passed. They were not specific about what they consider to be storm passage to be. So we don't know if that's tomorrow afternoon or Friday. At this point, we just don't know. That's a state operation, obviously, and they will get back to work whenever the state tells them to. Lastly, our message to the residents is the same thing. Please, on Bolivar, if you haven't evacuated, evacuate. We expect it to be significant, and we expect everyone to have some kind of impact. So the winds should start this evening in the 6 to 8 p.m. time frame. Intensify up until around midnight and stay sustained until about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, at which point they'll start tapering off. And again, we expect to be back to weather normal around noon tomorrow. The forecasters did tell me it's going to be hot and humid, so if you lose power and don't have air conditioning, it's going to be uncomfortable, but not life-threatening. While this is all good news for us, I do think we keep in mind our partners to the east who are not going to have it so good. I'm on a group text with all the county judges. I'm the westerlymost county judge. All the rest are east of here. And one of the concerns they've been texting back and forth is that a lot of their residents did not take the evacuation order seriously. They're seeing small numbers. One county judge said he only knows of 27 people that evacuated. So I want to thank the Galveston County residents for having confidence in us and believing what we told them, and feel for the people who didn't take that kind of advice. Where it's going to be a lot worse than here, by the way. We're going to do relatively well compared to what we're going to see east of here. I think that's all I have. Any questions I can answer?
Judge, given what you just said about maybe not as well evacuated to east at the Golden Triangle area, what preparations were you made for this area just in case you see post-storm evacuees start making their way down this way?
From this county or from another county?
From other counties coming down this way.
We would accommodate them as best we can. We have plenty of hotel capacity at this point, so and that's generally been the theme across the state. There's plenty of hotel capacity. Dallas, the last brief I got was only at 39%, so there's plenty of capacity, and if they can get to a hotel here, we would encourage them to come on. I think one of them commented, "I won't leave unless you promise me I'll come back on Friday." Well, here, I could probably make a very strong hopefully promise that you could do that. East of here, I would not be able to make that kind of statement because they don't know what the damage is going to look like.
There's no doubt where the storm's tracking in that area that's going to be a priority for folks to get power, water, everything else restored. But for this area, should there be, because of wind damage, power knocked out, have you talked to CenterPoint, have you talked to Energy, have you talked to Texas New Mexico Power about how, because they always use crews elsewhere? Correct. Will they have enough crews here to work for your residents?
I asked CenterPoint that you're going to take care of us first before moving east. I don't have an answer yet, so I asked them that question by text message a couple of hours ago, and I'm sure they're busy like everybody else is and just haven't got back to me yet. So that's our hope. On a similar note, We released all but one of our buses because there was no more demand for the evacuation that the state was providing. We let the state take those buses and head them east to where the demand we thought would be greater. I guess we'll wait and see if that's true or not. So we have released the state resources that we felt comfortable releasing to go to an area of greater need.
Do you have updated storm surge estimates?
The storm surge estimates have remained pretty much the same, and that would be potentially 4 to 6 feet on Bolivar. Anywhere other than that in Galveston Island, actually I believe the storm surge model for San Leon Bay Cliff decreased by a foot. So this consistent with what you would expect with a storm moving slightly east again.
What can you feel about the residents? They evacuating, then they say, okay, well, there's nothing going to happen now, I can go back. What would you suggest to them?
We will get them back here as quickly as we can. We want them back here. So as soon as we can assure them power, and really if they want to come without power, we're not going to stop them, I don't think. We don't expect that kind of damage. But sanitary water and conditions, as long as all that's met, we would welcome them back as soon as they can get back. And we'll keep all of them posted on those conditions.
At this point in Bolivar particularly, if folks have not left yet, is there a window you want to give them?
Your time is running out. You
You
know you can't leave on the ferry anymore, and your time is running out, and you're going to have to go toward the storm for probably, 15 to 20 miles before you can turn and go a different direction. That's not a task that I would look forward to.
It was emphasis again too, that there will not be a shelter of last resort or anything like that on Bolivar.
Sheltering makes no sense, certainly on Bolivar. That would be putting our people at risk. The only thing that we've done in addition in Bolivar is added law enforcement over there. So we have deputies who know that they are there for the duration. They're not going anywhere. They're in one of our facilities, which is hardened and will sustain the winds, and they're there for the time being.
And they're mainly there not to respond to anything immediately, but if there's
The minute the winds start dying down, to protect people's property. We want the citizens to know that their property is safe. They don't need to rush back to try to protect their own private property. We're going to help them with that.
Do you have an approximate number of people that actually stayed on Bolivar because it's all?
The last count I got, which is just somewhat of a guess, was only about 40 families, or 40 residences. I guess we don't know how many people are in those residences. So again, I think I'm really impressed that they took us seriously and the power of the storm seriously and made other plans for at least a couple of days. Anything else? One last thing, I'd like to thank Kroger Houston, whose president called me and said they're going to be here the second they can get bottled water out here for us as soon as the storm passes. So we appreciate community partners like that. Helps us a great deal and saves taxpayers dollars, honestly, because they're donating them and we're not having to.
About Galveston, how do you think the storm surge is going to actually affect the island?
Actually affect the island, well, it'll probably make transportation difficult. So depending on how high it goes, the island itself will have difficulty passing over roads because they're going to have the same issue there that we have in Bolivar. The advantage the island has is that, as you know, the seawall slopes up and then tapers off, so it will not be able to overtop the whole island. We're not expecting nearly that kind of storm surge.
In fact, Mayor Craig Brown's on, or Mayor Pro Tem Craig Brown's on now, giving his press conference, and they're more concerned about that bay
Absolutely.
coming back over than the seawall side of things. Is that, y'all be getting the same
Right,
information?
sure, that would make sense, because the seawall does what it's supposed to do, protects the front of the island and keeps the flooding down, but when the seawall ends, that protection ends. So they could have some potential, just like we're worried about on Bolivar, same situation, different area. All right, stay safe, everybody. We will see you back here hopefully on Friday with no news to report.
And you've been listening there to Galveston County Judge Mark Henry, just sort of updating people on what's going on. He says they're most concerned about this being a high wind event, and particularly on Bolivar Peninsula. Many of you may remember just how devastated Bolivar was during Ike. And he's looking at winds, he says, between 60 and 85 miles an hour, just really hard to imagine. At this point, urging people, if at all possible, evacuate because they won't be able to get there to rescue them. He says just a couple more hours. They're most concerned about power being knocked out, but also talked a little bit about that storm surge and just their concerns about that. One last thing, there were busloads of people we've been showing you for the last 2 days who have left the island, many of them unable to stay in their own homes. He said they're going to wait and see before they start bringing people back, but he says at this point, time is running out for people to evacuate and to get out of Galveston safely. Obviously, we're going to be following this throughout the day. We're also expecting to hear later on today from Houston officials as well as Harris County. But at this point, what we are hearing from Galveston County is they feel as though they may be able to handle this, but they want people to get out safely. We'll be back in a bit, and we'll see, of course, beginning at 3 o'clock. Alrighty, cutie. My little IFB kept freaking me out.
I saw you take it out, so
Yeah,
I assumed
'cause-
you had like
yeah,
mixed minus or
yeah.
something on it.
And it's so jarring to hear yourself, like a second later. Hello, hello.